Hi, it's Richard Barrett for Guitarist here with a couple of new Epiphones. The one that I'm holding is the BB King Lucille, and this guitar is very true to the spec of BB's own guitars. So perhaps to talk through a few of the overall structural details, we have a maple neck with an ebony board. Maple neck would have probably been what BB used certainly in the later 70s and 80s. We have Grover tuners, so they're of a high quality, a Graphtec Tusk nut, as I've already said, an ebony board with medium frets, fairly low profile, glued neck joint obviously. Now a laminate body, and the laminate is maple, poplar, maple, front and back. As you'll see, there are no F-holes. BB didn't want to have F-holes. A useful byproduct of that, if I just flip this over, is that you have this inspection plate, if you like, where you can get in and replace things or clean pots, things like that. Something that was always really tricky about this design of guitar is the ship in a bottle type arrangement of having to wire everything up and drop it through the bridge pickup hole or an F hole. So none of that is a problem. Now, there are a few electrical appointments here that are going to warrant me demonstrating the sounds. But before we go there, I'd just like to point out that we have two sockets here. I'm plugged into the standard mono one at the moment, and if you were to plug another lead in, then you could run this guitar in stereo. That is, the neck pickup and bridge pickup would feed separate amplifiers. It's not a new thing. I mean, Gibson were doing that back in the late 50s with the 345, the 355. I think it's fair to say that most players modified those guitars so that they could just plug into a mono amplifier. And I think that BB King, as far as I'm aware, always used one amplifier. Having said that, it's nice to have the option so that you don't need to modify the guitar. You can just plug in mono, or you can use the stereo capability, which is something that you traditionally would have with this control layout. Okay, going on to a couple of extra details here. We have the TP6 fine tuner bridge. This is set up just with the fine tuners in all the way. I believe that BB liked the way that this kind of bridge affected the sound, and certainly on a semi-hollow guitar like this with richer mids and a longer sustain, it might have given a bit more focus perhaps, but it's true to BB's own guitars. Moving on to the electrics themselves, we have two Alnico Classic Pro humbuckers and 2 volumes and 2 tones and a 3-way selector, as you'll find on a multitude of Gibson designs, including the 355, 345. Now, something that you wouldn't normally get is this 6-position tone selector. In position 1, as I have it, it's not doing anything, basically. We have just the full signal from the humbuckers. So as you can hear, that's a very classic setup. But things start to get a bit more adventurous when we bring in this 6-position tone selector, which is essentially a series of different chokes and capacitors that will cut out various frequencies. And as a generalization, I'd say that the further up you get towards 6, the thinner and more honky the tone becomes. So let's have a listen. It affects all pickup selections. It's not a phase switch or anything like that. So, position 2. Not a world of difference, but there is noticeably less power when you're playing the guitar itself. It's cleaner. Position 3. So again, we've taken a step down. Let's move on a click. That's definitely taking on an out of phase type character, though as I say, I don't believe it is actually out of phase. I think it's capacitors changing the tone. another click. And then finally, cuts almost all the bass out of the sound. So just briefly to demonstrate, I used the neck pickup there, but this is equally effective in any pickup position. Just take it on to... And the bridge, right, that's full fat bridge. Then... So it's quite extreme at that end. Okay. The pots inside here are CTS 500K. That's all really high quality stuff. Mallory capacitors. I'm not aware whether this is wired in a 50s style or a modern style, but what I can tell you is that it does clean up very nicely on the controls without losing a whole load of top end. Now we have the Joe Bonamassa Lazarus Les Paul, named after a 59 that Joe had that he brought back from the dead, if you like. So starting at the headstock end, we have these very nice Epiphone Deluxe branded tuners, which are occlusion style, a one-piece mahogany neck. Now, like the Lucille, we have this classic, I say a new Epiphone headstock shape. It's actually an old headstock shape that they used to use in the 60s, I believe, that they've brought back, which is quite pleasing to my eyes anyway. And it's, like the Lucille, a fairly rounded 59 style neck. An Indian laurel fretboard with medium jumbo frets, slightly higher than on the Lucille. Glued joint, of course, and a mahogany body. Now, there is a maple veneer on the top here, which gives the flame, but this is on top of a maple cap. So the maple cap is relatively plain. It just does its job as far as tonal quality goes, like all classic Les Pauls. But to give it a little bit of extra snazz, there's a flame maple veneer on the top. Electronically speaking, this is a much simpler guitar than the Lucille, but it is worth doing a slightly deeper dive into it because it has the 50s wiring. Now, 50s wiring and modern wiring are different in that the 50s wiring has the tone control and the volume control in a different order in the circuit. So when you turn the guitar's volume down, you don't lose the top end the same way that you do with the modern wiring. Now, different people like different things, but it always struck me that when you hear a vintage Les Paul played on a record or on stage even, then you're probably listening to a guitar with the vintage wiring. So the way that I've got my sound set up at the moment is just with a little bit of hair on it. Now, if I just reduce that bridge pickup volume a little bit, you'll hear that I've been able to eliminate the breakup really, but not lose any of the top end. Perhaps the best demonstration is if I just switch on this tube screamer, and you'll hear that. By the time I get down towards halfway, about 6, it's a clean tone, basically, and it's lost nothing from having the volume reduced. Right, I've turned the tube screamer off again, and we're just going to have a listen now to the pickup selections, just with the core tone of the guitar and amp. So there you have it. An extra detail that might be nice for you to know is that this is about 8 pounds in weight and the Lucille is about 9 pounds. So there you have it. Coming up next is a short bluesy track that I've made with the two guitars, and I hope you enjoy it.